Alright, AoC meeting number 4. Not gonna lie, I missed the first 17 minutes of this meeting, but I still made it. I never want to have to miss a meeting unless it's over something super important. No worries though, notes were taken and the meeting was recorded, so you guys won't be missing anything in this video. Thank you for that, Molly. So, this meeting's emphasis was mainly on character balance and map stuff. They started off talking about talents. Some are looked at as really bad or not worth picking. However, some of these talents are used by different groups of players. Direct Current was an example. It's looked at as really bad and many of us wouldn't run it. But there is a sizable group of players that do use this and use it often, so they obviously enjoy it. Is it anywhere near as good as Field Study? No, but if people are using it, it's adding enjoyment to the game, and that's really what it comes down to. Booby Trap was brought up for Vivian. The question of if it could be put in the base kit came up. The answer was probably not. I agree with not making it base kit. I think this talent is pretty slept on. I saw it being used in pretty high level scrims, like PML level, and I was really surprised with how much work it was putting in. I think this is something that needs to be tried out more because it looked really useful. Also, they said before integrating a talent into the base kit, there's a long list of other options they could look at first. Cardio was also brought up. The main argument was, compared to the other two talents, it doesn't feel impactful enough, and not really the idea of cardio itself is bad. So they'll look into that. Andro and Lex are getting their old fire rates as talents. So this was brought up again. If you guys don't remember, this was one of the first things I brought up to Martini since it was asked for so much. Back then he said it was definitely something he was open to the possibility of, but didn't confirm if it would specifically happen or not. Well, when it was brought up this time, he did say that it was something they were going to do. However, it comes down to time and resources. It's something they need to plan far in advance, so don't expect it soon, like in the next month or two, but do expect it sometime in the future. It is coming. Then they moved on to talking about Barrick. This is around the time I came into the meeting. They brought up his ultimate and how it feels underwhelming compared to other tank ultimates like Makoa, Khan, Nando, etc. Granted, ults like Makoa and Khan are among some of the best in the game, but yeah, to many players it doesn't feel strong enough. One thing Martini thought was a fair argument was that Barrick could use his ult, die in the animation because it takes too long, and lose his ult over it. So they would like to make Barrick more fluid without doing anything that would break him. Because Barrick actually does do really well, they said. He's a tank that sorta does everything, but doesn't excel at anything. Like for example, Ruckus excels at doing damage even though he's a tank. While with Barrick, he does good damage, has good sustain, survivability, and shields well. But none of those things stick out a ton. They're all relatively even. Another thing that was brought up was making Tinkerin part of his base kit, because that's what everyone picks anyway. So I think a big part of that is because his other two talents don't really compare, and even if people were to pick those other two talents, his base weapon is so weak how it is now. Tinkerin as the main weapon would be a solid idea. I think Architectonics would have to be buffed as well since it's really bad. Fortify is probably fine. Also, this is of course an assumption, but I imagine Hair Trigger would be the best thing to bring back to fill that talent slot with. It wouldn't make Tinkerin fire faster, but it'd give you the faster firing pellet spread fire, so those who do like the pellet spread shotgun could still have that option. Also, because the coding is already there for it, so they wouldn't have to make a brand new talent. Then the question was asked if percentage damage would be messed with or removed. Tyra Fire, Sky Debilitate, Cassie Big Game, Street Justice. They're not going to remove them, but they may see balance done to them. They don't want to remove them because tanks are really strong and that's a balancing factor to them. You guys probably remember this because I brought this up to them before. Also because there's only a few instances of them in the game, so they're not super oppressive and everywhere. Now about Tyra Fire and how it works, because a lot of people are confused on how it spreads. It's not a perfect circle, it doesn't follow action, it follows the terrain. In a flat area, it's concentrated towards the center, but the little fingers of fire will spread in a liquid physics simulation outward. In hallways, it follows the hallway. So basically, it's how you'd expect liquid to work in real life. Then Fernando's Hot Pursuit card having a long 10-second internal cooldown was brought up. They wanted to isolate the frequency of his mobility, and this has made him more balanced across the game. He's not as effective in that aggressive flank tank role anymore, but he still gets played, he still does well, and he's even still played in pro play too. A few things outside of balance were brought up as well, like why PS4 didn't get the update at the same time as everyone else. Basically, Sony didn't like a certain achievement and they had to fix it. That's why it was delayed. They talk with Sony all the time about getting updates out on time, how long the certification process takes, and getting crossplay, yada yada. They were able to pull some strings and get the update out to you PS4 players when they did. They hate having delays, even if it's 1 or 2 days. Another thing that was brought up was how you guys don't like the new mounts because there's no animations. So hopefully they get animations to those soon. Animations with the characters because I know they already put animations on the mount themselves. We talked about Atlas next. Atlas is doing really well right now. He's kicking ass and getting picked a lot. A lot of people really seem to like him. It was brought up that people don't like the delays on his abilities because it feels clunky. However, these delays were definitely intentional though. They want you to think about what you use when you use it. They didn't want it to be a thing where, oh, I did this at the wrong time, let me do this right away so I'm not punished at all. Like I said, tanks are really strong and there has to be some drawbacks. However, they're still going to review the timing of the delays though. Then they talked about maps. So this is something I brought up a few times. Before I was in the AoC, a map designer said they had plans to remove disliked maps as more were added. The specific example I was given was Timbermill getting removed when the map after Shattered Desert was released. However, this doesn't appear to be happening. Martini showed us a survey about what maps the community said were their favorite. Stonekeep was number 1, as you probably expect, but Timber was number 2, believe it or not. I know, that's crazy. The least popular ones were ones you'd probably expect, like Ice Mines, Frozen Guard, but also, unbelievably, Serpent Beach. Now, there are reasons for this. How the map looks is probably a big factor here. Timber is very bright and pretty. Serpent is very dark and gloomy. Martini said over time, dark maps tend to eat at a player subconsciously. So I do think this survey is a little biased here. But they do want to do another one and put it in the in-game client. Hopefully, it'll be one that has players focus on how the maps play, rather than just in general. Martini is not against working on some things for Timbermill to make it feel better though. Some ideas were tossed around about more ways to flank to the 2 high roofs. In case you wondered why spawn rooms have been bigger recently, it's mainly to give the art team more room to do things and I honestly love it. Look at Fish Market's spawn room, it's cramped and kinda boring. But Warder's Gate has amazing and beautiful spawn rooms, and both of them are different. It's not like bigger spawn rooms hurt gameplay anyway, you have plenty of time to get to the doors and you don't spawn far back after you die or anything. Feedback was given on Warder's Gate and Shattered Desert. Honestly, I don't see many complaints about Warder's Gate other than people dying to the crystals. I think that's mainly because people don't know how they work. So from what I've seen, if you run right into the crystal, you'll fall. If you use a movement ability into it, you keep the momentum from your movement ability and get none from the crystal, so you fall. If you are knocked into it by something else, the momentum from the knockback and the momentum from the crystal stack and you get sent back really far. If you stay on the crystal, you only bounce a few times before falling. As for Shattered Desert, the main things I've seen is that people hate how easy it is to spawn camp on it. There are no anti-spawn camping measurements taken on that map. The other big thing was how the sand slows you down when you're clearly not on it. Other things were brought up that it's too wide open, feels like an Onslaught TDM map, and that the mounds of sand are annoying. Also because the point has no cover. Map bans in Ranked were brought up and it can't be done right now. They want a bigger selection of maps first, and they need time to make it work properly. But they do want to do it eventually. Then they went on to character balance. Before the meeting I asked if we could talk about improving certain characters. When it comes to what characters, I based it on the characters I see people asking for buffs for a lot. Like a lot. And these characters were added to the meeting list. Barrack was one of them, and he was talked about at the start. Drogos was another. So Drogos is being played quite a bit in pro play, even getting banned in some instances. Now, as far as him being good in pro play, I think it is important to consider that when Drogos is picked, it's almost always when he can pick Wormjets without having to deal with a super strong hit scan counter. That's mainly why he does well in pro play. Drafting lets you set up for those situations. When it comes to regular play, he's one of the healthiest when it comes to loadouts and talent diversity, and he does have solid play rates. They did see he's gone down in performance amongst the player base though, so they are planning to do something with him. If you guys played the game early on, you may remember when Drogos could skate or ski around while flying. Well, they're bringing this back, but it's gonna be a bit different. How it'll work is you'll be able to thrust and maintain your momentum with your booster so you can ski around for a longer duration. This will make him more mobile and a bit harder for as many counters to hit him. It's definitely something that sounds like it'll be really helpful. Then we ran out of time for the meeting, unfortunately. If you guys want to know the rest of the list for the characters we planned to talk about, it was Willow, Ying, Furia, Lex, Buck, and Maeve. All of those characters are the ones I have seen people ask for buffs all the time. All the time. More so than any other characters. Since we did run out of time, they did say to leave the feedback in the AoC Discord and they'll look over and review it. I went through each of the characters and gave feedback on them. So for Maeve, Martini did actually imply at some point during the meeting that her prowl would no longer be cancelled while attacking, because another flank, Koga, can use agility while attacking. It's nothing too crazy, it's a relatively small buff so it won't break her at the levels she does well in. It'll also help make her prowl cards way more viable, since you'll now be able to make full use of prowl every time, and in turn full use of those cards. So I really hope that's something they go through with. I reassured them that it was a good idea. For Willow, her dead zone is strong, it's in a balanced spot, but everything else about her isn't. Willow has a lot of counters and can't really take any duels against other DPS characters. Her talents aren't bad, but the problem is without Blast Flower, her base damage sucks. So bringing up her base damage from 500 to 600 and lowering the Blast Flower bonus to balance it back out would allow her to use other talents without losing so much damage. Her Flutter is also pretty underwhelming compared to other forms of mobility, with its only saving grace being that it gives her verticality. A while back it got a 10% distance nerf to it, and that could be undone. Also, lowering that cooldown by 2 seconds would be nice. Leon and Cassie have faster and more impactful mobility options on 5-second cooldowns, so having Willow's at 8 seconds would allow you to use this weaker form of mobility more often. Now to balance this out, her Flitter card, which reduces the cooldown of Flutter, would probably have to be removed so you can't make the cooldown super low. Her Sprightly card that gives her DR for 3 seconds after fluttering would also have to be lowered to a 2-second duration. Then there's her ultimate. They fixed the horizontal movement on it so it isn't super slow, but the vertical movement on it is still super slow, so that has to be fixed. For Ying, Ying used to do a lot of healing, more than any other support, and that's because that's all Ying did effectively. Her damage isn't good and she has no utility. Now after the nerf, her healing is the same as the other supports, but since they either have damage and utility or both, and she doesn't, Ying isn't a worthwhile pick. A lot of people want Focusing Lens in her base kit so her damage numbers aren't so low. I said if they don't want to do this, they could raise her base damage and this would help her do more while healing. It could also make Focusing Lens a strong DPS talent like Pip, Grok, and Grover have. Some kind of utility being added is also a good idea. Furia is a very popular character, gets picked a lot, but Furia causes a lot of frustrations because her only good talent is her high-risk Solar Blessing talent. People feel forced into it and it's frustrating. The Furia player hates it when tanks dodge the beam, and the tank players hate it when they get no heals because they couldn't turn around in the middle of a heated fight to catch it. People also want her talent Cherish buffed, and if it was buffed, people could pick that if they don't want to go with the risky Solar Blessing playstyle. The buffs I said and some other AoC members agreed on were to increase its healing bonus to 35%, since the nerf from 50 to 25% was really harsh, and to have the talent give her right click increased range. So in a way it's like Ceres's Mortal Reach, which is cool since they're sisters that would have similar talents. Now I'm not saying give it Mortal Reach range, no, more like the range it had before the nerf. For Lex, outside of the old fire rate talent thing, I've seen a lot of complaints about his retribution being random. It's on a long cooldown, so that RNG hurts even more if you get the wrong target or the same target. Bitey had a great idea to make it so retribution marks the target you're closest to. This way you have some control over it. Another big problem is his ultimate. His ultimate is pretty lackluster. They buffed it to break barriers. Many thought this would break the barrier and execute the tank behind it, but it only breaks the barrier and doesn't do anything to the tanks. I see why they didn't do it, it could be too strong, but I did stress that some kind of more meaningful buff needs to come to the ultimate. Then for Buck, many feel like he's too weak. I rarely see him played, and when he is, he's not doing very well. Now I'm gonna be honest, I don't play a lot of Buck either, and I haven't gotten very much feedback on improving him. I saw that people wanted him to have 5 or 6 total ammo again. I also saw that people wanted his recovery animation to be 1 second again instead of 1.5. It was nerfed to that because the DR was so strong, but the DR got nerfed too, so there's no reason to have a 1.5 second animation. Outside of that, his range seems to hold him back quite a bit. He has to get in real close to really hurt people, and he only has 700 DPS without Ensnare or Bounce House. So maybe improving his falloff could help him. Talus's falloff was improved quite a while ago and it did wonders for him. And that's everything I said. They're gonna review it, so we'll see what ends up happening to these characters. They could all use some kind of bump. I don't think any need any major buffs. I don't think they're too far off from being good. So yeah, this list focused on characters that the community feels needs buffs. I will also attempt to talk to them about characters you guys feel are too good. Leon and Cassie are complained about quite a bit. Moji too, despite me almost never seeing her. Again, like I said, I'm not going to call the character broken. 1850 DPS doesn't take away all the massive drawbacks her character has. So ideally, like I said before, I want to talk to them about reducing the DPS and fixing her very detrimental problems that hold her back, so the character can be well-rounded and effective, but not frustrating the players. If you have any other feedback to give, let me know, either here in the comments or in the AoC suggestion chat on my Discord. Keep in mind I only read the comments on any particular video for about 2 days, then I stop reading them. The AoC suggestion chat in Discord is something I always read no matter what. Anyway, that was everything from that meeting, and of course a little extra. There was a lot to bring up since there was basically nothing in this meeting I couldn't talk about unlike other meetings, so I'm sorry if this was a little long. But yeah, that's pretty much it guys. I want to thank you all for watching, I very much appreciate it, and I'm gonna see you guys laters. Bye.